Now, for our first keynote session, technology for a purpose, food security and climate change with Feroz Sheikh, CIO and CDO at Syngenta. Hi Feroz, how are you?
Hi Neil, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an awful lot to get through, but you have the honour, absolute honour of kicking off the show today. So the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And hi and good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon where you're logging in. I wanted to talk about, as we have all said, the theme of this conference, that 2023 is the year of disruption and the role technology plays in bringing such large-scale impact and the purpose with which we can apply technology. As Neil introduced, I am the Chief Information and Digital Officer for Syngenta Group. And I'm going to talk about agriculture, but you might be intrigued by the other two pictures here. Before I joined agriculture and before I start talking about the impact of food security and climate change, let me just tell you a little bit about what I was doing before I joined Syngenta. I was part of a philanthropic effort in creating education accessible to children in India. And we took an ambitious goal of addressing every single child. For a country of 1.4 billion people, every single child is a population of 200 million children. And the impact of technology, we went on to create an open technology platform that allowed teachers, subject matter experts to create and publish open content for children. The government came along and they printed 500 million textbooks with QR codes embedded inside of it. You see some pictures from these village schools in India, which the children could scan and then benefit from the added learning available through the digital medium. Such is the impact of technology that education in India can, forever be different because of the advent of digital technologies like this. And that then, brought me here in agriculture, looking at a similar change or transformation that is necessary for humanity. But before I go there, I want to take a small digression and talk about, Star Wars, something that many of us have grown up with and loved. Back in the 70s, when George Lucas was imagining the storyline, the epic of Star Wars, he realized very quickly that the technology to produce that kind of, outwardly experience did not exist at that time. He went on to create Industrial Light and Magic, and ILM became, a turning point in filmmaking and storytelling. And it gave us such memorable experiences, from not only from the Star Wars series, giving us characters like Jar Jar Binks, the most adorable, and at the same time described as the most hated character in Star Wars, or the liquid metal T-1000, the robot that passed through the bars of the prison. And I remember seeing that with awe as the most shocking visual effect of our generation. Or even to the series of Pirates of the Caribbean, the character of Davy Jones, an example of pixel perfect animation and storytelling. Now, what's the point? The point here is that technology, computer-aided rendering, graphics, and special effects and animation changed filmmaking forever, and the impact it has had is humongous on that whole industry as a whole. And that brings me to agriculture with the core narrative that agriculture and humanity needs the ILM equivalent for our future. And I'll begin by by bringing two specific data points. The first one is by 2050, the population on Earth would have reached 10 billion people. And if our productivity of land does not change, we would need an additional 600 million hectares of land to feed everyone. Now, where is this land going to come from? Because the current estimates show that the world has passed peak agricultural land. There is no more land, and the only way in which this would come, if we don't change the trajectory, is through more deforestation and measures like that, which none of us want. The second one is, when we talk about the global warming and the impact of greenhouse gas emissions, almost 25% of those greenhouse gas emissions come from food and agriculture. And if we continue to stay true to our ambition of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we are looking at 22 gigatons of carbon dioxide emissions, equivalent CO2 emissions, as a gap. 25% of that, once again, has to come from food and agriculture. And what this needs is, like I said, the role of technology to unleash the equivalent of an ILM for agriculture. If I talk about it, in terms of agriculture historically has been treating the plants by an average. You go out in a field, you plant, spread the seeds across the entire field on an average. If there is a pesticide to be applied, broadcast over the entire field and so on. In order for us to meet that 600 million hectare land gap and that 22 gigatons of CO2 emissions gap, we need to get to spatial, temporal, and genetic precision. What we mean by that is spatial precision. Instead of spraying, broadcast, you bring it down to per plant care. Temporal precision, on the right time when the plant needs that care. And genetic precision, to the targeting down to the level of species of weed or the species of insect that is to be treated. And to do this above the ground, so basically all the factors that affect the growth of the plant. On the surface, what's happening on the surface moisture and everything, and below the ground, treating the soil health itself as a way to then improve the yield of every single acre of land. Because remember, there is no more land, and this has to happen. Technology has a big role to play in bringing this level of spatial, temporal, and genetic precision. I'll take a few quick examples of the industry in general, and several of these are areas that we at Syngenta are pushing forward in shifting that trajectory for agriculture ourselves. The first one is when it comes to spatial measurements. The examples of spatial measurements in agriculture include stand count, counting how many seeds turned into a plant, how many corn plants do you have on a per square meter of the field, or weed population, rainfall measurement, and so on. It's a no-brainer that when you have computer vision models with proper calibration and training, these models can outperform any kind of physical, manual, spatial measurement. It's a simple example of where ongoing evolution in technology can make an impact on the practices that have been followed through generations inside of agriculture. Second example is the use of remote sensing through satellites, proximal sensing through drones or cameras that are mounted on tractors, or even cameras using the modern mobile phone cameras to scout the field and record keeping on the field, shifting it from either memory or manual record keeping or even spreadsheets, down to applying AI algorithms that are looking at the color of the field, how green the field is, and creating what we call as the vegetative indices, and telling what's the level of growth. Are there fields, are there sections of the field where the growth is not as expected? And what has been the historical trend by going back in time and looking at the satellite imagery and allowing the farmer to then care for those areas where the yield is being negatively impacted. Ultimately, the ambition is by giving this kind of a view that we allow the farmers to help improve the yield on even those areas that are seen as red here. Or even, to the question of physical inspection, where farmers would go out in the field, collecting soil samples, looking at the growth of the plant, both the growth of the root or the height, or even insects. For example, if they had to measure how many insects, what's the density or population under the canopy, looking at it manually by devices like the ones shown here. This is shifting technology through the advent of robotics. IoT sensors is automating several of these physical inspection tasks. There are as yet, scalability limitations behind these. So how many sensors can you deploy, or how many robots can effectively work out in those real world conditions where you're looking at muddy fields, water, dust clogging the vision, the cameras on the sensors, and so on. But that day is not far when, as this technology continues to mature and become more ready, it will enable timely data capture, more accurate data capture, and allow intervention on the field. Even in terms of measuring the insects, biodiversity, there are new type of investments where we are making in developing biodiversity sensors that can use computer vision to measure the movement of honeybees or other types of insects on a field, and then allow a farmer to take decisions that respect what's happening on the field, again on time and with accurate data at their disposal. Another example of the role technology plays to bring about this change is when it comes to applying products out in the field. Now, what you see here is farmers in smallholder countries like India and APAC, where they one of them is carrying the package on their back, and the other is carrying the spray nozzle and spraying manually. Or even in the developed countries where this is being carried out through tractors and advanced machinery, which is still broadcast. And to take that, whether it is about planting seeds or spray of pesticides or fertilizers on the field, technology is now being applied to use predictive models to make a prediction of where the risk is and where is the need for the product higher, to create what we call as precision prescription. And then that prescription can be sent to a drone to carry out an automated spray, which can then turn on and off the nozzles based on the prescription. So if it sweeps across the field, instead of applying an average dosage rate, by turning on and off, it's able to apply the product only in those areas where it is needed and skip the areas where it is no longer needed. Or even down to the advances in the modern tractors, which are able to do this at a nozzle level control and even connected to real-time cameras that are mounted on the boom of that tractor. This is a technology that is starting to become mature and scalable, what we call as see and spray, where the camera is looking at the picture, recognizing, what's a weed and what's not, maybe a corn plant. And then as the tractor goes over on top of that field, turning on the nozzle only on top of the weed, and applying the herbicide on the weed and not on the corn plant. Several examples of this, coming through the use of AI, machine learning, and computer vision in real time on the field. Now, as we promote these new practices and allow farmers to follow what we describe as regenerative agriculture practices, it's important to then create the right kind of incentive structure for the farmers. And this is just a few examples of what we are doing in connecting and creating a reliable trail of data all the way from what the farmer did on the field to the hands of the consumer. So the consumer, whether they are buying strawberries or tomatoes, can see the QR code and scan the QR code, and they can see the journey. What was it that the farmer did on their field? How was it packaged? How was it harvested? How was it transported? When and how did it land in the supermarket? Is it already too stale? But that's just one aspect of it. An equally important aspect is about giving a reliable data about the field and the practices that the farmer has followed. And the idea is then that the consumers, as well as the value chain companies that are bringing that harvest onto the table, are able to incentivize farmers to follow these regenerative practices that will ultimately help them improve their soil health and improve the yield on top of the same acre of land that they have, because we cannot afford to expand the land that is needed to feed the growing population in the world. And that basically summarizes that what we should see is, imagine this to be a jigsaw puzzle. Since the Green Revolution, there have been advancements in genetics with new traits, new seed varieties coming which can withstand certain type of conditions or maximize the yield. Advancements in chemistry, so products which are more effective at dealing with different kinds of stress factors that the plants go through, and the advancements in machinery, whether it's the drone or the tractor that comes along. But the missing piece of that puzzle is technology, through the use of digital tools, through the use of AI and machine learning, coupled with either real-time information coming through the sensors, lights and drones, into farm management systems that allow the farmer to make better agronomic decisions in order to improve the yield and the soil health of their field. And the impact is planetary scale. This is in order for us to contain that the gap in CO2 emissions and to fill that 600 million hectares of land gap. We need these advancements in technology, and that's the missing link to complete that picture of innovation that's happening in agriculture. And this is what keeps me and my team busy. This is what gets me out of the bed in the morning to come and to see how can we bring this latest technology out in the field and do it at scale, so that we can continue to drive this kind of impact for food security and climate change. Thank you. Back to you, Neil, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Feroz, I will say actually, brave move starting with Jar Jar Binks. It's the first time I've had a presentation when someone has included Jar Jar Binks, so I'll forgive you for that on this occasion. But I have one quick question for you, because we are getting a little bit tight on time. And What I want to do is sort of open this subject up to more fields rather than just agriculture here. What you were showing there is if you can implement technology at the coalface, if you will, of an agricultural setting, it shows how it can be applied in absolutely any setting.
Absolutely. I think that is probably the underlying message that, what I saw firsthand in education, or what we are seeing here in agriculture. The role of technology is applicable to any other sectors and industry. And I would encourage, our listeners today to continue to bring these ideas forward and think about where and how technology can make an impact at scale.
Absolutely.
The
Technology for
scalability
purpose.
is really important.
As we said. Feroz, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated that. Thank you for opening the show for us today.